I'm Mangino. Welcome to the Mangino Talks, Pittsburgh podcast. I've been a radio talk show host for half of my life and nearly half of that right here in Pittsburgh. And so on my podcast, we talk about everything that matters to us all. From current events to Pittsburgh history, social issues to sports, politics to practical day-to-day life. And today, another episode with Joh Schalcosky of the odd, mysterious, fascinating history of Pittsburgh. You can find him on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter at Odd Pittsburgh. And for the next 25 minutes or so, you can find him right here on Mangino Talks. John, good to have you again.
Hey, great to be here.
The thing we're going to talk about today, a little bit of a divergence, if you will, from world firsts. Mm-hmm. You love to research, obviously, to be able to find all the information that you do. One of the things that you are really drawn to is genealogies.
Yeah.
Explain that fascination you have.
Well, I'll put it simply that you are all the people that came before you. And most of us don't know their names. So now I'll give you a prime example.
Okay.
Most people know their grandparents, or at least their names of their grandparents. Can you name all of their parents?
No.
Can you name all of those parents? Their parents of their parents? No. Well, these people had to exist, had to not die, had to somehow make their kids survive, go through trials and tribulations, wars, poverty, abandonment of your homeland, all these things for you to be sitting here today with me talking, and you don't know their names. Now, it tells me a thing. Now, it's not your fault. This is a common thing. Mm-hmm. This is not like I don't think I've ever met anybody who knows all their great-grandparents other than me, right? But it's who are these people that make up who you are? You are those people. Your DNA literally can prove it.
Right.
That you inherited parts of these people who came before you. And what do you do with this information? So how I approach all history and all of everything is about this kind of journey about who makes up who you really are. Like if I took away your personality and you were just a body, where did that body come from? You know, you can be all spiritual about it, but it really came from your great-grandparents, came from their parents, came from their parents, came from their parents. That is who makes up who you are. It's why you have the hair, the head shape, the eye color, how tall you are, lots of things all come from these people.
Do you think that you could go so far as to get a general outline without real tight specifics? Mm-hmm. But if you did a genealogy on somebody that you did not know, that by researching back far enough, you can get a pretty good idea of what is the essence of this individual?
Well, yes. So, in fact, I do that on almost everybody I meet.
Really?
Everybody I meet, I dig in a little bit into their family trees to find out who they are from a deeper sense, a sense that they might not even be aware of.
Wow.
You included.
Really?
And we are going to explore your family tree. Now, obviously, you know, and this is part of the journey, is trying to find out discoveries and things and stories and attached things that you might not have been aware of. Mm-hmm. And what you're going to find out is that you are, and me, and most people that you meet are part of one of the same.
Okay.
So number one, we're 12th cousins. Okay, does that mean anything to you? You know, now it now I know.
So we go back far enough.
We go back 13 generations.
There's a connection.
We were the same person. It's not just a connection. We came from the same person.
Wow.
About 12 generations ago. I know who that person is. We will talk about him. But regardless, most people that I research, you could find a connection somewhere, somehow, in part of their family tree. If I kept on going back, I'm sure on your father's side, the Mangino, by the way, line, it would go eventually back, I'm sure, somewhere we would connect somewhere on Italian side as well. However, records are a little tricky when you start getting to Europe. You do have to start to learn how to read all these languages. And I do. I can read cursive, Russian, Polish, Austrian, Croatian, Italian, Latin, German, I started to learn a little bit of Gaelic, but Gaelic is one of the hardest. It's harder than Russian. Wow. And I can read it all, and I can understand it all. And a lot of it's good because it's you could take like a document that's just translated. It says like, so you get to be familiar with words like marriage or birth or things like that, and then you kind of can see the information you need. But you do need to track down the actual sources. You can't just go on Ancestry.com. Well, and you can. I mean, that's all. And we'll talk a little bit about that. How do you even start? Like, I want to find out who I am. How do you start? Ancestry.com is clearly one of the best, easiest ways to start. It costs money. There are plenty of other things that are free, like FamilySearch.org or WikiTree, like Wikipedia, but WikiTree, like all free. And but everything has to be sourced. So you can't just like make up things and say like, oh, I heard from my grandma that this guy's name was whatever. Everything has a source. And part of genealogy is trying to track down these sources from local libraries and institutions or newspapers or, you know, churches and find the actual birth certificates, the actual birth baptisms, their, you know, marriages. All these records give clues also usually to people that came before. It will list maiden names of mothers or parents' occupations, because it's one thing to know the names of these people who make us up, like who your 16 third great grandparents were. There's 16 of those people. 32, sorry, it's 32 great great grandparents. 32 separate people. Now, like, how do you find out who they are? How do you find out not only their names, but who were they?
Right.
Were they just farmers? Like, everyone can't just be a farmer, right? Like, and what you find out is they were just like me and you. You know, they went through the same ups and downs, their own lives, most likely unconscious of their own family history and their own family past.
Right.
They definitely weren't thinking of us 200 years later. They weren't thinking of that every action in their current life would shape our lives 200 years from now. But it did. I mean, that's what makes it real mind-boggling.
And then it does today, too.
It does today, too. And that you could actually look at these people now and learn from them and see, how did your ancestor deal with the Civil War? How did your ancestor, you know, deal with immigration? How did your ancestor deal with being an immigrant, like a first-generation immigrant? You know, like, you can learn from their experiences to shape your life. And that's what I do with all these family trees, is I learn from all these characters, and I take a little bit about what they did, and because, like, it's, in essence, it's kind of spooky, but literally your blood was there. You were in the Civil War, part of you. You were in the American Revolutionary War. A small smidgen of your DNA was there. It's still in you. So, like, when you think about it that way, and you think that, like, you literally are history, you're the combination of everything that came before into you. Now, like, and you're making it, you're part of it. But, like, you have to understand that, like, all that, everything that came before, it's already inside of you. Now, can you tap into it in some ways? Yeah, I think. There are paranormal aspects, a little bit of it. There's a thing called genetic memory, you know, that you could pass down. People say musical abilities, or you pass down the color of your hair or your eyes. Well, can you pass down your ancestors' fears, their wants, desires? You know?
Interesting.
Yes, I know. It gets very interesting where can that be influenced? Their fear of the dark. There actually is studies of Holocaust survivors, descendants of Holocaust survivors, having the feelings of, like, that, going through the experience of, like, that mentality of the experience of their ancestors, like, unnaturally was passed down to them, these traumatic experiences. Now, all of our ancestors went through things, and you can see mirrors and patterns of how you are all these people in certain ways. You know, you're your own individual, and each one of them is an individual, but together as a whole, it becomes you. So
that is, it's pretty mind-boggling, to be honest with you, because I began the exploration process in 2020 during COVID. I was interested in whether or not, I was told by a friend of mine that I may be an Italian citizen by birth. And I wanted to explore, is that true? Could I demonstrate that to the nation of Italy, that I am properly an Italian citizen, and I want to be recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So I began the process of what you're talking about and went back to my dad and then his father and then his father and then researching when did my grandfather have my dad? Was it pre or post his citizenship?
Mm-hmm.
And realized that he had my dad pre-citizenship, which means my dad was born as an Italian citizen. My grandfather was still an Italian citizen when he had him.
Right.
And then went back to his father and then needing to go back into Italy and then finding birth records.
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate this and then present all of this to Italy and say, here, may I have my passport now, please, and be properly recognized as the Italian citizen that I am? But what you're talking about is just so much deeper than I think anybody who has an Ancestry account even thinks about.
Oh, yeah. When you start getting into DNA aspect of it all, it even gets deeper because you can start finding literally how did you get your eye color from who, not just, like we already know the answer comes from one of our grandparents, but what grandparent? It might be obvious, but maybe it's not.
Right.
You can, with enough training and knowledge, be able to dig into your genetic code to literally find exactly where curly hair comes from. And also disease. When it comes to genetics, you'll find out, and there's proof right there that if you don't think that you were related to all these people that came before you, well, guess what? The fact that your great-great-grandma had breast cancer, now every woman in your family's got it because of her, right? Maybe nobody else in the family has it, but she had it, and now your grandma had it, now your aunt had it or whatever. And in those types of things, genetics are legitimately passed down. You have a 50-50 chance every time a kid's born. And the thing is, it's not actually 50-50. You inherit like 51.3% from your dad and 49 or something like that. And then if you have siblings, they inherit a whole different combination of those same 50-50s.
Right.
Which is a combination of all of their parents. 50-50s roughly going back and back and back. So through DNA, you can successfully track down third cousins pretty much and closer, which are people that related to your great-great-grandparents. And so like your parents' first cousins, their kids, that type of thing. Or maybe like Raphael Mangino, when he came over, he didn't have just one kid. He had 10, and then those 10 kids have 10 kids, and those 10 kids have kids, and then some never left Italy, some went over to Canada, some went wherever, but you're related to them all. You're so distant now that you would never know it. You could be standing in a row at the same place and never know that you're related to every single one of those people, but you are. And like it goes to show you, like we're 12th cousins, so very small, and that's small. Like small. You're talking like, like if you. And the funny thing is, once you get back beyond 4 or 5 generations, the DNA actually kind of gets sketchy, to where you stop inheriting certain people DNA. So a sense, when you go back to something like 8, 9 generations, and by that time you have something like 690 great-grandparents, like individuals, like men and women who all have their own family trees, who now what you have happen when it goes back that far is, number one, you simply don't know who your cousin is because it's spread so much that most likely you've married your cousin. And now I'm talking about 12th cousins, 8th cousins, people that you'd have no clue that you're related to, that there's no genetic possibility you're going to have some kind of issue, because there's not really that closely related, but you have a similar origin to somewhere, to one individual, genealogically record-wise.
Right.
But when you start looking at the DNA, you might start to realize that you actually didn't inherit any DNA from certain individuals.
Oh, my goodness.
And that it could get broken apart and lost and like get filtered out. So like, while I might be related to a lot of really big names, I might not have inherited any of their DNA, even though I'm technically related to them, which that means that you could have replaced them with anybody, and I would still end up the same way I am today.
Okay.
That's where it gets crazy with DNA. So,
so you did a bit of a workup on me.
I did. I did. I will. I'll go to before I'll tell you that workup. I'll give you a sense of types of things that you can do with your family tree.
All right. Before we get into this, I want everyone to know that John did not divulge any of the information that he's about to deliver to me ahead of time.
That's true.
I am learning this for the first time, as all of you who are listening are learning this too.
That's right. Just like I'll be your makeshift Henry Louis Gates today. And I feel like I should say, Mangino, this is your life. Well, what types of things can you discover when you're doing your family tree? So number one, I'll do experiments with myself. I wonder, can I find out all 16 people who were my great-great-grandparents? So my grandparents' parents. Could I find out who all 16 of them are? And then is it possible to track down every single living descendant of those people?
Okay.
It is. It's hard work. I've done it for all 16 of my people, great-grandparents. I have a running total right now of over 1,120 descendants, which means these are people who are third cousins or closer. So now I'm an only child. I grew up thinking I kind of was alone, that I don't have any family, I have no brothers, sisters, I have aunts and uncles, but not that big of a family. And what I found out is that my family is much, much bigger than I ever could have possibly imagined. I just found out one of my neighbors, like 10 houses away, is a fourth cousin, one time removed. So even though it's, distant, literally a family in my own neighborhood, I didn't even know it. So
okay.
Also, genetically, you can find out things like my grandfather lived to be 96, right? His sister lived to be 102. He had a cousin who lived to be 93. Well, nobody else in my family lived past 90s. So something's going on with this one line of tree. Is there a way to kind of figure out what it is? There is. Genetically, I find out there's a gene mutation called the SIRT1 gene, which is considered a longevity gene. And if you look into his family, just between this is my grandfather's first cousins and closer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14 individuals who died above the age of 91, all related to the same couple named Giuseppe Di Donato and Giovanna Romito.
Wow.
Yeah. So from either one of them comes this gene, which they inherited, which literally just because you inherit something doesn't mean it's going to activate or things like that. A lot of it has to do if you live next to a chemical plant, you might not live as long as your cousin who lived in the field, but there is a genetic element to all these types of things.
Yes.
All types of diseases, all these types of things. You'll be able to find all that stuff out. Other thing is, did you have, what do your last names even mean? What does Mangino mean?
I was told that it means left-handed, maybe left field.
It does. So it means left field, from what I could tell. And why do you think you were named, or one of your ancestors got this name? There's a reason. There is a story, obviously, behind the first Mangino. Prior to 500 years ago, there was no such thing as surnames. Nobody had a last name. You were, John of Ross, Robert of Moon,
Okay.
Maybe eventually you would forget the of, the D, the last name is D, or little posh McCoy or McSmith or something like this. All it means is from.
Mm-hmm.
So McSmith or something like this means from a smith, and lots of different types of smith things you could do, not just blacksmith, and there's lots of types of silversmiths and all this type of stuff. They were a smith of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody was so good at doing it that they literally called him that. So clearly, one of your ancestors definitely lived in a field that wasn't on the right. It was on the left.
Yeah.
They said, "There's Mangino's over there."
Yes. That's the claim to fame, that we had the field over there to the left-hand side.
Right. So you're not just Mangino. I mean, that is your paternal line. Your father's 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 father, back to the beginning of fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, who is the beginning of fathers? Another question you could ask yourself. How far back does it really go?
Right.
Right. Clearly, it has to go back to the beginning. Where we had to start somewhere.
Right.
So that's where it becomes really interesting, is that when you start looking back at everybody's family tree, your neighbors, your friends, what you do find is that eventually you do connect back to each other somewhere, because you essentially are the same. You come from the same thing.
Fascinating.
If you go back even, we're only talking 100,000 years. But if you talk back just evolution in general, to when you were just bacteria and slime floating around the ocean, I mean, those are our great grandparents. We came from that stuff. We were at one point stuff. We all just separated and became us. And so it's like weird to see like how that happens.
Which explains how kids' rooms get the way that they do.
Exactly right. Exactly right. But yeah,
all that
origins of last
slime and
names
stuff
are fascinating. They all mean something different. They all have a unique origin of some sort, which tell a little bit more of the story about who your ancestor might be, where they came from, what they were known for.
Okay.
But also birth records, marriage records, death records will give you the actual occupations. Like I have a 9th great grandfather in Poland who was listed as a bell ringer. Now, in that time period, in the 1600s in Poland, it was being invaded by Sweden, right? Because you have to put everything in perspective when you're talking about your ancestors. They weren't just in Italy forever. Like, why are they even there in the first place? Where did they come from?
Right.
What was going on in that town in Italy that caused them to come to America? Or why did they stay in this village instead of that village? There's reasons behind everything. And if you start looking into it, you can kind of find a little bit of these stories. And you will see things that mirror your own life and things that you can learn from it. So this is the first thing I'm going to hand you is just in general, kind of like your tree, which is just some of the expanded different lines that I went down.
Yes.
Now, your Italian side, I still will be able to figure out a little bit. But I also want to show you this one. This is color-coded to show you locations of where your family was from. This color is Italy, obviously. This is your dad's side. This is your mom's side. And then there's some other colors. And we are going to talk today about your other colors. Not so much going to talk about your Italian side, even though you think that would be the thing I would want to talk to you about. Your story becomes very fascinating with your mother's side of the family tree. Number one, do you know anything about your mom's grandfather, the Roth side of your family tree?
I know a little, not very much at all.
What if I told you that your great-grandfather, John Roth, was his name? He was born 1911.
That is his name?
You know where he was born and where his family was from? Transylvania.
No kidding.
Yes. In fact, on his World War I draft card, he's 6'2", black hair, skinny, thin, immigrant from Transylvania. Now, I actually know the exact town where he's from in Transylvania, and his family was from there, and his grandparents are from there. And today it's considered a part of Hungary, like near Romania-Hungary border, but for hundreds of years, your family lived in Transylvania.
Come on.
Yes. So that's one thing. This is a more in-depth list starting from yourself, going back both sides. But the line that I really want to talk to you about is the line where we're related and also where you are connected to all of American history.
Stop it.
Now, you think, when you think back about yourself and who you are and who came up with, you probably represent like a very Italian, right? Kind of like, this is who I am.
Right.
Right. Well, I mean, would you be surprised that I told you that not only yes, you're Italian, but you're also one of the first families to ever even step foot in America? That you were here, part of your DNA and your family was here from the very, very beginning. And I'm talking about in New York, not New York, because that time it wasn't called New York, it was called New Amsterdam. And your family, along with mine, were some of the founders of what they call Huguenots and founded Dutch, New Amsterdam, which would later become New York in the 1690s. But that's just part of it. So that's when you go back real deep.
Right.
But what I want to go back is on that list, you can see the Cole line.
Yes. Okay.
So your grandma, Rosemary, and this is her family tree going back. Now, this you've never seen because I've seen the work that both your brother and your wife have done on your family tree and yourself. And there becomes like tricky things of trying to connect the pieces. It is really like putting together a massive puzzle. And like there is a solution. You just need to figure out how it all fits together. And you have to do that with documentation. So this is still more of your family tree. This is your grandma's side. Now this is, you go back on that and you'll see a guy named Isaac Cole.
Yes.
This is his family tree. Isaac Cole's going back Okay. So you're related to every single one of these people that you see on this list. All these people are you. But when you start seeing this unusual pattern of names appearing that are not English per se,
No.
but are Dutch.
Yes. Oh, wow.
From Holland. Now, through that connection, you'll see a guy on there named Joh Cochrane. And Joh Cochrane was born in 1612 in Zeelie, Belgium. Okay. He was a Huguenot, was forced to leave Holland and come to America, where he settled in what they call New Amsterdam, Battery Park area of New York City. And that man is both of our 11th great-grandfathers. So he's my 11th great-grandfather. He's also your 11th great-grandfather. That's who he is. But that's how we're connected, through your grandma's line, going back to that coal line.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, would you find...
So he was born in 1612?
Yeah. So 400 years ago, we were literally the same person. Now, he had, a bunch of kids. Those kids all had kids. Oh, I'm going to tell you about that.
Okay.
But his kids all had kids, and his kids had kids, and one of those is you, one of those is me. Now, it's also probably 10,000 other people.
Right. But still.
But isn't that crazy? Yeah.
It
so
is.
you can connect, and I've yet to meet a person.
It's not quite Kevin Bacon.
It's not, yeah.
But.
Yes, exactly. But, I mean, you'll find out unfortunate things like you might be distantly related to your wife, which is pretty much the case in every family tree I've ever done. Now, how closely related, that's where it becomes a bigger issue. Most of the time, you have no idea, and it really doesn't affect it any which way whatsoever, other than the kind of curious fact that, indeed, you were, at one point, the same person.
Wow.
It is interesting how it all kind of meets up and comes back again.
Right.
It's just like the matter of chance. Because remember, there wasn't that many people living in North America in the 1600s.
True.
So the chances that if you're related to one of them, you're probably related to them all. And that is our case, is that we're related to every person who ever founded New Amsterdam and Belgium, from that part of New York's and America history. But because of that, you had all these people who fought literally in every single battle and war and every single event that has ever happened in North American history because of these people. And you and I, we get to share these experiences now. And I'm going to tell you now about some of your ancestors who played significant roles in the shaping of American history.
Oh, stop it.
One of them was your sixth great-grandfather, a guy named Martin Cole. Martin Cole was born in 1839, he was born here in Pennsylvania, in Mercer County. And he lived his whole life as a farmer, nothing unusual, like most people were farmers back then.
Mm-hmm.
However, when he was 20 years old, the Civil War breaks out. And you have to sign up if you're that age, but you don't really have to go. You could still pay somebody else to go in your place. You could abandon it. You don't have to join up the most deadliest battle known to exist. Your great-grandfather signs up on day one and stays the entire time enlisted in the battle. He was, in fact, mustered out on September 11th, 1865.
So he served the entire Civil War.
The entire Civil War. And not only did he serve, he was in the cavalry. He was in the 2nd Ohio Cavalry. His group from Mercer, PA was shipped over to Mercer to Ohio. And he fought in basically every single important battle that ever existed. And here's a list of all of the battles and a little biography about his cavalry. Out of that, 200-something men were killed in his cavalry. 60 were wounded or something like that. He could have stepped foot the wrong way, and you wouldn't be here today. You're learning about this man for the first time now, but it's because of the things that he went through and lived through is the reason why you're here.
Wow.
And look at those battles. I mean, he was there at the presence of Robert E. Lee's surrender. He was, it's on front and back even.
Oh, my goodness. So it's double-paged, detailed service of what the 2nd Ohio Cavalry Regiment did according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And it does go over, oh, my goodness,
and
3 pages.
Believe it or not, if you become interested in it, you could just type his name, Martin Cole, 2nd Ohio Cavalry, on Google, and you'll find him listed in all the official paperwork of the U.S. military. You'll find stories about other people that were in the same 2nd Company with him that wrote about it, kept diaries. You'd find out literally day-to-day actions of things that he saw and things he experienced, things that you experienced. Remember, you are him.
Wow.
Now, you go back a little farther generations on him, and you go back to the Revolutionary War, where, as far as I can tell, you have about 7 different great-grandparents who fought in the Revolutionary War. These are people who were descendants of these people from Holland in New York who, had families. 150 years go by. They've all had families now. Now that war breaks out, and you have to choose. Now, remember, your family's choice was the same kind of as mine. We had a 100-year history in America where things were semi-okay.
Right.
You didn't mind that the British were taxing you or for whatever purposes. You had people on both sides of the story, people who were long lifers here in America, like our family was, and then all of a sudden, fight against the thing that your ancestors were from. It was a very confusing time. But all of our ancestors, I have, I think 9. You have, from what I could track down so far, 7. Significant. There wasn't any kind of George Washington or anything like that, but significant people who made major contributions in the way that we know America as it is today. It wouldn't be here if it wasn't for these people, and you are those people. Now, that's where it becomes super fascinating, is how deep can you get into who these people are? I'll show you a small little list of example of mine. So right here is a list of my great-grandparents who fought in the Revolutionary War. Each one of those people can be documented straight to me. Each one of those allows you to join organizations like the Daughters of the American Revolution, which now your daughter is eligible to join. Or you can get scholarships, you get to dress up real fancy and all that, to wear a sachet. We could join a thing called the Sons of the American Revolution, which is a descendant only. There has to be a proven lineage to revolutionary patriots, they call it, which means that you're allowed to officiate official government events. You're invited to give out awards and things like this because you were there. And a very small group of people that even go into this depth of these organizations. We can join the thing called the Huguenot Society, because there's only so many people that can prove direct lineage to these Huguenots. It's a big thing, especially in New York. People like Teddy Roosevelt were members. Major people in history were also members of these same organizations. They are kind of hoity-toity, kind of private clubs. However, it's kind of cool to know that you can join pretty much any one of them. And but it is all these people. I am fascinated a little bit in your Transylvania side, I could say, just because it's interesting.
Right.
But then because I've never done a family tree where I've seen Transylvania. I've seen people say Austria-Hungary or Romania, but not Transylvania. As soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa.
Well, here's what's really crazy is that the family would joke and every once in a while make comments, especially around, the fall and Halloween time about Transylvania. And I never took any of that seriously.
Yeah. How funny. Yeah. You legitimately, I'm sure if I did the work, who knows how long your family tree goes back in that part of Eastern Europe, but you could connect to the man himself.
Oh, stop it.
Anyways, we'll save that for Halloween.
Okay.
But you get an idea of kind of how it works, and it's fascinating.
For people who are listening now, and they have their interest piqued.
Yes.
What do you recommend that they do to begin this exploration and not just go with the surface? Because you can easily do the surface stuff back to mom, dad, grandpa, but to just start really probing in a bit and finding out more and more about each individual.
Yeah. Your easiest source, because it's so popular, is Ancestry.com. But I would take everything that's not a source, like birth records, that's a source. Marriage records are a source. But someone else's family tree is not a source. So if you're going in there, you'll see that it'll give you these hints that say, oh, so-and-so has the same person in their family tree. Connect. You really want to pay attention and make sure that's the truth, because so many times you start barking up the wrong tree, as they say. So that's one way to avoid that.
Okay.
Is to actually do this. And it's not hard. You just type in your ancestor's name and the day they're born, or roughly.
Right.
And even if you don't know the day they're born, you could just, by enough searching, find the information you're looking for.
Yeah.
And it is searching. It's like searching literally for a needle in a haystack. However, they exist, and you can find them. You just have to put the legwork in to do it. But if you want a free, Ancestry.com costs money. If you want a free resource, familysearch.org, which is run by the Church of Latter-day Saints. But that is where I've uploaded your entire family tree, for example. You could just search for your name and you'll find the tree. It's free. Anybody can add to it as well. So it's like open sourced a little bit. So if someone else finds information that I didn't have, they can add it and you work collaboratively. It all has to be sourced, so that's okay. And then Wiki Tree, WIKI tree. And that is my preferred source of keeping track of everything. It's kind of like a Wikipedia for family trees, but you can connect to insane things. I'll give you a quick, this will be the last thing I'll say about who I'm related to. Ready? Isaac Newton, my 10th cousin. Amelia Earhart's my 9th cousin, 2 times removed. I'm related to both Mary Weller Lewis and William Clark. I'm related to Susan B. Anthony's 9th cousin. Norman Rockwell, Fred Rogers is my 14th cousin, 2 times removed. George Westinghouse is my 9th cousin, 3 times removed. We share the same a different 11th great grandfather, also from that same area. So actually, that's interesting because you might be related to him as well. 2 of my great grandfathers, my 11th and my 13th great grandfather, a guy named George Soule and Francis Cook, were both on the Mayflower.
Were they?
Yes. They both came over and they were on that first boat.
Nice.
Aaron Burr is my 3rd cousin, 9 times removed, which means 9 generations ago we had the same ancestor, but we're actually much closer related than we are. So I'm very closely related to Aaron Burr. Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock. In fact, I'm related to every single president, including Obama, through his mom. I'm not related to Trump, which is good. So, although, you want to know who is related to Donald Trump?
Who?
H.J. Heinz. They're second cousins.
Are they?
Yeah, they're the same great-great-great-grandfather was Heinz.
Yeah. Did not know that.
Elvis, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, Marlon Brando, Cecil B. DeMille, Walt Disney, Orson Welles. I'm related to every single one of them. So, George, out of all the presidents, I'm the closest related to Abraham Lincoln, which I'm happy about. I'm 6th cousins with Abraham Lincoln. We share the same 5th great-grandfather. Well, his 5th great-grandfather was my 10th, sorry. But anyways, so you can see that you could almost connect to anybody and anybody that's ever came before. If you do enough work and really kind of dig into it, you'll be able to connect to them, which will give you a whole new sense of who you are and how you share. That it's just like another one of you. Like I really connect close with my grandma on my mom's side. Her last name was Hanford. And I know that you go all the way back to the beginning of Hanford's. There was this guy in Connecticut named Thomas Hanford who was a priest, reverend. And I didn't mention that to you. But the people who come from the same guy. Now, my grandma happened to retain that same surname because of just the way it was passed down. But people who also are related to the same guy, Justin Bieber, Robin Williams, Warren Beatty, they're also their 9th great-grandfather. So it's like, it's weird when you start looking into it that you're kind of related to everybody. So it's messed up. But you included, you have met, and you'll see them listed on there, but I'll send you more details. But you have many people in your family tree who have all sorts of types of occupations, including reverends and people who were desired enough to leave the country they were from, come to America and start preaching. You come from these people. And a little bit of this kind of makes up who you are. Even your desires to want to help something that has no real connection, but you feel like that need to help.
Right.
I'm sure you can dig into your ancestors and find out why. They call it ancestor worship, but you want to get careful when it comes to that. But yeah, so I explore everybody to explore it all because you are these people. You'll connect immediately and understand that you are history. You're not just reading about it, you lived it.
Right.
Yeah. So hopefully it gives you a new perspective on life.
I like it. Joh Schalcosky of the Odd, Mysterious, Fascinating History of Pittsburgh. You can find him on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just type in @OddPittsburgh, and I hope you enjoy your exploration as you dig into your own ancestry. Thank you very much for listening to the show. Please be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. For more on me and the show, be sure to visit ManginoTalks.com. If there is a topic you would like me to talk about or a guest that you would like me to have on, send me an email, mangino@manginotalks.com. Follow me on your favorite social media platform by using @ManginoTalks. And once you find me, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the pages with your friends and your family. And thank you very much for listening to the Mangino Talks podcast.